meetings law, and I'll be telling you everything that's going on in a few seconds.
Okay.
Right now, they're posting the URL on the website, so anybody that wants to see it can see it.
So this meeting is being live streamed.
About a 20-second delay.
Okay.
And she's putting it up on the website right now.
Yeah, Dr. Van Tracy standing by for that link from Jacinta. So.
Okay.
And make sure y'all get that all lined out, and then I'll get out of here.
No problem. Appreciate you getting it set up, Alan.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Basically, we're just waiting for confirmation that it's up before we start.
Okay. So, Dr. Lorio, when is the final?
December 31st.
Wow. Wow. What are you, about 48, 50? Dr. Lorio.
56.
It's live.
The final?
I am 50,
Congratulations.
so yeah, my husband and I are both retiring. So thank you.
That is wonderful. I actually just signed a new contract.
Billy, you're a mess, Billy.
Dr. Van, y'all are live.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Billy, just let me just ask, as you call the meeting to order, we need to let you know that any comments by the public are welcome and can be emailed to publiccomment@lsbme.la.gov. And all of the people have been identified on the televideo conferencing. And I first need to make sure is the sound clear and audible to you and to everybody in the public. So can anybody, you have any trouble hearing us? Anybody here? No. Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right. So one thing with Billy, is after each agenda item, we should ask if there's any public comment to make sure that we don't miss anybody's. They'll be coming in by email. I'll be watching my email to make sure if any of them show up. They'll show up on my email, and I'm ready to watch for that for us so we don't miss anything.
Okay.
So,
So I guess-
can
Go
y'all
ahead.
see, do y'all have an agenda? Because I can put it up on the screen if you need to see it. Did y'all see the agenda?
I don't know that we actually, I know we sent in some topics we were going to discuss. I don't know if it was written up or not. Let's see. Oh, you got it there. Okay.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, I got them magnified because I'm old.
Let's see if I can make it a little bit bigger for you. Hold on a minute.
Yeah. Good luck.
Let's see. Always when you're trying.
Yeah.
Here we go. Zoom. I'm gonna take it up a little bit. How's that? Can y'all see that better?
Oh, that's better.
Okay, good. All right, so you're all ready to go. If you want to start by introducing everybody to each other, feel free to do so.
Okay. Of course, I'm Billy Dabdu. Right now, I'm the chairman of the advisory committee, Podiatry Advisory Committee for Louisiana State Board of Medical Examiners. And have been on the board for quite a few years, and we'll have a discussion later on about how much longer I stay. So, next. Jay.
Okay, hey, I'm Jay Groves. Part of this committee for a number of years and glad to be here. That's about it. I practice in Covington, Louisiana.
I'm Denise Lee Elliott. I practice I'm in private practice on the West Bank in New Orleans and mainly out of West Jefferson Hospital.
I'm Dana Bolton. I practice at Oxner, Jefferson Highway.
I'm Chantel Lorio. I'm one of the newer members of the team, and I work for Oshner's health system. So I practice primarily out of New Orleans, but I actually work all over the system.
And I'm Van Kalot. I'm the Executive Director of the Board of Medical Examiners, ex officio in the committee, and here to help y'all get all the things done you need to get done.
I think that's it, huh?
Yes, sir.
People in attendance. All right, guys. So I think Dr. Groves or somebody had submitted the previous minutes, but and y'all may have read it already. But main thing I'll go back through that we discussed at the last. One of the last things we worked on was the history and physicals for DPMs to be performed, and that passed through the legislator, was put into effect this year, and that was the main thing that we had worked on last year. And Dr. Man, I know you all had done a lot of work on legislation on that. Dr. Collada and them did, and then with all the lobbyists and the different senators and House of Representatives. But for people with advanced scope of practice, that now allows you to perform your own H&Ps on that. Now, eventually that kind of goes to almost everybody because the minimum training is 3 years these days, and everybody's going to end up with advanced practice as it goes along. So it was an ability to move us up to what the other states, the United States, have. I don't think there's been a problem. I know it has not been a problem at my institution. Each hospital had to kind of work with you on it. Any questions or comments? Anybody have any idea how that's been going with them?
There's been no change at my hospital, and I've had no issues raised.
Okay.
And I'll just bring up for the record that I am board certified in surgery and board certified in medicine, podiatric medicine, but I had 1 year of residency, so do not qualify for this, and I am still 100% in this. I think it's the right thing to do, knowing that going forward, very few people will be in the same position as I am going forward. Most people will have this 3 year. The 3 year residency, but I think it's just important to note that this decision was made in the right frame of mind to do the right thing for patient safety. So that's why I wanted to make sure that I brought this up, that this wasn't just, hey, let's try to get as much stuff as we can get done. This was done very, very carefully and with a lot of thought going into it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You're absolutely right. It took a while to get through any process like this. And anytime anything's done on a legislative basis, it can be a really slow process too. But we're fortunate with the backing of the LSBME and there was no major adverse events or objections to it. It was able to pass. So good. That was the main thing we worked on last year. Is there any other old business we need to discuss? Anybody have anything? Otherwise, I'll talk about potential and new things we were thinking about. None being heard, then I know that over the years we've talked about different things. I've been contacted, I know Dr. Groves has, different people, especially with the doctors in the smaller communities where they're working with nurse anesthetists, and it's been a problem with the podiatrists. They have to have a medical doctor or somebody in the hospital, surgeon, somebody that's willing to assume responsibility for the nurse anesthetist to perform surgery under anesthesia with a nurse anesthetist. I don't know that that would be an easy fix. It's something that we've been asked to look at. We'll probably have to work in conjunction with anesthesia, which I don't know that they're necessarily for or against it. Nurse practitioners may be for it. It would be, so it's something that we have been contacted by numerous times from people in some of the rural hospitals in Louisiana. Any comment on that, guys? Jay, I know you've been contacted too. Jay, you still there?
Yeah, but I had to apologize for that. Take care of something. Yes, mostly it's when in the areas that do not have MD anesthesia available. And as Billy said, more remote areas that have a hard time doing surgical cases for diabetic patients and that type of thing, and elective cases, simple things. So that has been on the agenda or idea for a number of years. And I know letters have been sent to the LSBME over the years, as well as personal requests to us to bring that up at some point. The other topic, too, I think, Billy, you were bringing up, been brought up, was the concept of nurse practitioners and PAs working for DPMs.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, the physician extenders would be an important part of potential future planning for the committee as well, to address that topic. That's been brought up equal number of times, if not more.
Well, what I'd like to do maybe is we need to consider one at a time how we're going to approach this. I think the nurse anesthesia situation, I think will possibly be the more difficult of the ones, but I think we'll have to start communication with the anesthesia people, whoever they may have, with LSBME also, and figure out some way of at least investigating this and see if we can come up with a mutual way to help people in the rural areas get the care that they need in their local community instead of having to travel. Dr. Kalad, do you have any ideas on this, or is this something that the State Board of Medical Examiners is involved in, or do we need to go through anesthesia and the nurse group?
Well, I think the first thing you ought to look into is how will your malpractice or professional liability insurer approach this, okay? And, you know, I've been around long enough to remember when this first happened with docs, and they were charging us $500, and then it became $1,000 a year extra premium because of the supervising role that we were taking for the nurse anesthetist. So you got that issue of liability, and then you've got, is it even available? And number two, what do you think that the people will say in terms of are DPMs qualified to manage complications that might occur?
Right.
So you got those two issues I think you got to address, forthright in the beginning.
Right.
And, we can help you do that, okay? But again, I think there's going to be perhaps some pushback, but I think the first place to do is talk with, the people that write your professional liability coverage,
Right.
see if they're interested in that situation, what they're doing nationwide elsewhere, if that's going on. The board's going to ask me often do, what are best practices around the country in this regard? So we're going to need to be able to know that. And then we need to sit down and talk with the anesthesia group to make sure they're not going to go to the legislature and fight that or give us difficulty dealing with that issue.
Right. I think you're right, Dr. Claude. I'll start investigating this. I really think this will be the more difficult thing to accomplish. I don't think it will happen overnight. So I think you're absolutely right. So if the committee has no problems, I may reach out to the major malpractice companies, see what they say. I can check with the National Association what other states do this and try to get some of their practice, acts or how they have it written to do it and see what the liability situation is. I think that's a very good idea. So with that in mind, I think if there's no other comments on that one, we can always start looking into that as a committee. Anybody else, any other comments on that? Okay. And if not, I think what Dr. Groves is saying, that we have been approached by NPs and PAs over the years to ask if they could work in our office. I think in the past, and it still would, I'm assuming, be the same, is that, and I have to think about this, they're basically like with my ortho friends that use them, the orthopedics and stuff, in any specialty office, Yeah, they'll have to work within the realm of what you do as a practitioner, would be my understanding. Now, the question that arises if the NP is, say, like my daughter, who's an NP, works in cardiology, does workup for their doctors for their TAVR procedures and follows up and stuff, is the NP in your office, if you need them to help you with any medical stuff, not something that we don't treat, not out of scope of practice, but you say to your NP, look, I'm going to do a bunion on this 45-year-old, do heart and lungs for me, put it in, and if everything's okay, we'll proceed. Because I know that they do history and physicals for the ortho guys and stuff too. So, I mean, that would be something we'd have to look into, how that falls into our scope of practice in doing things like that. Now that we can do our own H&Ps for our pre-op patients on the ones we feel comfortable doing, then you'd have to, do you want that to be done with your NP? Then also the NP is working with us in what we do, which is tibial tuberosity on down. So anyway, I think that we'd have to reach out to the nursing board on that to see what their thoughts are. And probably the same thing. I think nursing board, correct me if I'm wrong, has their own board, whereas PA, physician assistants, are under State Board of Medical Examiners. Am I right, Dr. Collada?
Yes, you are, sir.
Okay. So that would mean there's different avenues we'd have to look at to see, you know, when people approach us with their large clinics that they work in, doing everything from surgeries like we do to wound care, what is the role of a PA or an NP and how does it fit into the practice? What's the demand for it? Is this something that can be done in a amicable way? Any comments on that, guys?
I mean, the only experience I have with this is years ago. I mean, 5+ years ago when this question first arose, one of our members, of course, asked the question. So I actually did contact the nursing board, and at that time they felt that our license was somewhat more restrictive than their license, and so they weren't necessarily even interested. However, things have changed, and so I think it should definitely be revisited. We just need to probably talk to them and update them and, you know, open that whole line of communication.
Well, would one of you be willing to take that if I do the, start working with talking to the state and the national about nursing ethicists being, you know, monitored with DPMs versus if you want to look into PAs or NPs, one of y'all or two of y'all, then that would just take a little bit of load off me trying to do it all.
Yes.
Billy, it might be, I'm just going to make a suggestion.
Please.
Rather than start out with the potential conflicts that arise from both boards, why don't we start out with the PAs?
Okay.
Number one. Number two, I think you'll find that the PAs are more available for hire than the nurse practitioners. You're not going to get in the middle of a fight right now, because I guarantee there's going to be another fight in the legislature with the NPs about independent practice.
Yes, that's true.
So I
Forget
think
about that.
And the PAs are going to come too, but I think the PAs are going to be easier to do this with. Once we set up a pattern that works with the PAs, then we can pattern the next step with the APRNs and work with the Board of Nursing wherever we can. How good that's going to be is always, you know, an interesting phenomenon that's hard to assess. But I think that if what we want to do is understand, first of all, how do PAs derive their privileges?
Right.
And under our rules and law, the PA derives their privileges from the supervising physician.
Right.
And so we can expand that rule if we choose, if the board chooses to include the doctors of podiatric medicine or the podiatric physician. I think the key here is what you can't let them do is, oh, I used to work for Dr. Jones and I did all his heart and lungs histories and physicals and all that kind of stuff. You're going to be the one who's going to be responsible for that work. You're going to be the one who's going to be making sure that they do it properly. And the work that they did elsewhere really kind of falls by the wayside.
Right.
Or for example, they might say that the doctor I work for let me do, abscess drainage, and I do abscesses on the back and neck and that kind of thing. And they want to do it in your office, going to be a problem because they're going to be
Right.
outside of your scope of work.
Correct.
We're going to have to make sure that they are willing to work within your scope of work.
Right.
And then the other thing we have to maintain is what's called the clinical practice guidelines, that each one of you will have to have a document with the PA. In the beginning, PA started out as what I would simply call a dyad. It was one doc and one PA.
Mhm.
Modern PA practices are evolving. For example, large groups like Ochsner or 10-member orthopedic groups may have two or three PAs, and how do you supervise them? And we are struggling with that right now, but I think we're working out a plan. But it's always going to be subject to what the legislature wants, and we'll see what happens when that comes up in this upcoming session.
Yes.
I think that the key here is, let's take this in chunks, because the PAs and the APRNs feel very competitive.
Mhm.
The PAs feel like they can't do things that the nurses can do, and they want to do more. And the nurses feel like they can't do things that the doctors do, and they want to do more. And I don't want to get us caught in the middle of that battle.
I think you're right. Well, I appreciate that. I think you're right. And one of the things, I'm bringing all this up because it's been brought up in the past. One of the things I would really like to do is, what is the need or desire by our members to really have this? If it's a small minority and not a large enough desire, I don't necessarily see any urgency, because I had forgotten and remember now that legislation, there was some debate. I think it got tabled about NPs wanting to be more independent and stuff. So I can see where you're right. It would be a political nightmare possibly trying to do anything at this time. Not sure, Jay, maybe you remember, or Chantel or Lee, Dana, you're kind of new to it, is how much demand are we really hearing for this? And if it's not that much demand, is it something that we decide to take on, or just wait a while and see how it works out in the legislature? Personally, I kind of think now, talking to you, Dr. Collada, that this would be something we'll look into it, but I'd put it on the back burner and kind of see what happens this year with state legislature with NPs. Correct me if I'm wrong. What do you think?
Well, I think, let me say this to you. It was very contentious last year. The PA bill did not get off of the floor, even out of committee. It did not even get out of committee. The PAs have worked this year with one of the senators. They passed a Senate resolution, which is not binding by law. It was not a concurrent resolution. And they had a couple of committee meeting hearings already this year. And they are all over the place. They had experts that came in and said PAs don't need supervision. Some came in and said PAs need a supervision.
Sure.
So they're in the throes of trying to get much more independent, change their names from PAs to physician associates, and all those kind of things.
Okay.
So I think that we have to see, the nurses made such a debacle of the legislative session last year that I'm not sure some of the people that supported them last year are going to support them this year. And the danger of the PAs face is, if they go too far overboard in the face of another problem with the nurses, they may get shut out.
Yeah.
We've made overtures to them that let's talk about doing something by rule. And actually, the senator who sponsored their committee this year basically said, you guys need to sit down and solve this. You don't really want the legislature to solve it for you. And we made the overture to solving them, and they told us politely and somewhat offhand, we're not interested in talking to you. So that's fine with me. So again, I think that I try very hard to be reasonable and accommodating and make these things in a way that it protects the safety and what health and welfare of the public. And that's really all I'm interested in. And that's all this agency is interested in.
Right.
And I think we can do it. I think what I would suggest is, let's kind of see what happens in the legislature.
Right.
And, you know, if they get, let's just say the PAs win a unique battle and get complete independence and you don't need any doctors involved, then you can start hiring them and do whatever you want to do with them, okay? You
Yes,
don't need any kind of rules in that regard.
right.
If they don't get that, then I think bringing them in to sit down and talk about what they want and adding some other offers, like working with your specialty area, we may have the opportunity to make them sit down and be reasonable and put this in a perspective that protects the public.
Right.
And I think that's what you want too.
No, you're absolutely right. I think that's a good idea. I kind of forgotten about how the legislature got stirred up so much with this last year. I think you're right. I think we get a feeling for how it goes because we may be stepping into something that may be very difficult to deal with, and it might be easier after it comes some sort of compromise. I know that some of the orthopedic groups that the podiatrists work in and possibly some of the bigger clinics, I can't speak for Oxford. We don't have them in my clinic. We have MAs, but I know ortho, which is different than MDs, but I know some of the ortho clinics where podiatrists work, a lot of them are working with PAs. I just don't know how it works, whether even if they do something for the podiatrists, whether they're doing it under the auspice of the medical director of the clinic. But either way, I think you're right. I think I would like to kind of table both this thing, the NP and the PA thing, and we can let people know that are interested in it that we are going to have to kind of see what shakes out in the legislation to see what we're going to be able to do. If they get their wish and they get things passed the way they want it, then that may make it easier. If they don't, then it would be quite a bit of work to try to get it changed. Am I thinking logically on that, guys? Chantel, Lee, Dana?
Agree with you, Billy. It does sense in jumping into it right now if there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff happening in the legislature. So.
Yeah. So I will say that right now, I'm not going to pursue anything actively as a committee chairman or ask y'all to, Lee, anybody will, until we get this worked out with NPs and PAs on, let them do their state battle. We can always, like I said, talk to nurse anesthetists and talk to the people in the rural areas, see how much of a problem has been with them. And then that may be something else we can at least open discussion with without trying to make it adversarial with anesthesia and the nursing people.
And Billy, I'll make a commitment to you all that I'll call up my contacts at Lamico. Are y'all insured principally by Lamico?
I'm now an employee of Slaughter Memorial Hospital. I have to see actually who they use. Oxford, I'm sure they are I'm assuming self-insured, but I don't know for sure. I'll find out.
Yes,
They are.
Yeah. Lamico, I know some people are also, there's the, they have the podiatry insurance companies, a couple of them that do podiatrists. So if you want to talk to Lamico, I will see by reaching out to a few of the other ones that I'm between Dr. Lorio and Dr. Bolton and I think we can probably talk to the Oxford and Slaughter Memorials of the world about that also.
Yeah, I think the big key is making sure that, what is going to be your liability if you are the supervising physician for anesthesia. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I had an awful lot of anesthesia rotation in medical school.
Right.
John Adriani was a personal friend of my mom and dad's, and he always wanted me to come do summer jobs in the anesthesia department. So I ended up with about 9 months of anesthesia rotation that most people didn't get. And I was never happy supervising the nurse anesthetist at all. So I can understand why some of you will want to, some of you may not want to, but I just don't want to set ourselves a trap that we're going to regret in the future because of liability.
I agree with you 100%. I had 30 days of anesthesia. That was it. And there's no way I'm comfortable doing it. So, but then again, I can't speak for some people may have more training in it. I don't know how this will pan out. All I'm trying to do is be responsive to questions that are being asked of us and trying to figure out a logical way. And like we have told these people that have asked about that this is not going to be a quick, easy solution. But at least we can start treading lightly and just get a feeling for it. And I think you're right. We'll check into malpractice coverage. If they say we don't cover this, well, that pretty much kills it. Any other comments? All right, I know, is there any other topics, guys? I know we're kind of putting those three. We'll work on them, but we're gonna kind of feel things out, like I said, for malpractice on nurse anesthetists. The other two, we'll see how it pans out in legislation. We can always call a meeting on later on in the year once legislation starts to look at it. Are we okay with those three subjects, guys?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I know one other thing was brought up to us, and I don't know if is the orthopedic representative to the committee on the meeting?
I know I haven't seen him.
Okay. One of the questions brought up to us was, why is it that we have to have an orthopedic representative on the advisory committee? Is that standard with all committees that are not MD committees? And I don't know the answer.
It's pretty much standard on all of our advisory non-MD committees that there are appointees usually from medicine that sit with them.
Okay.
There are doctors on the there are pulmonologists on the respiratory therapy committee. That one has not been very active though. There are sleep medicine on the polysomnographic technicians. There are actually two MDs on the clinical laboratory personnel committee.
Mhm.
There are two MDs in the PA advisory committee. So the vast majority of these, there are no MDs but there is no advisory committee for the lay midwives. And there is one MD on the genetic counselors committee. I think, and I have to check that one for sure. But of the 14 different 15 different license classes, the ones that have advisory committees usually have an MD there. So again, it's up to you all if you want to ask the board to change it. And I will certainly help you draft any rule change that you want to do. But understand that the advisory committees recommend, and the board is free to accept, reject, or modify the recommendation.
Sure. Well, at this
So-
point in time, it sounds to me like it's pretty much a routine for non-MD advisory boards. And unless, I don't know that it's ever been adversarial, I would like to think that the advisor person on there is there to listen and discuss their options without it being too adversarial. But that, so like I said, unless there's some real necessary reason to change it, then I don't know that I have any problems leaving it the way it is. What does the rest of
Billy, I'd like to weigh in on that.
please?
In looking at the other committees, at least the ones that you just mentioned, Van, I think the one difference that I see is that in those other situations, it's not someone who is a direct competitor. And from a standpoint of private practice and practice in general, orthopedists are in direct competition with podiatrists. So there is certainly a conflict of interest in that setting. So I think it's reasonable to discuss. I'm not saying that that I'm adamantly opposed to it, but I do think it's reasonable to say, if it has to be an MD just for the sake of having an MD, does it have to be an orthopedist? Can it be an orthopedist who's not foot and ankle specialized? That way, it's not our direct competitor who has a conflict of interest as our competitor. So just something to think about and discuss.
I don't disagree with your assessment, but again, I'm just pulling up the rules right now. I'm trying to, in the law, and I'm trying to see right now where I might find. Let's see.
And I think while you look at that, I think it's fair to say we have no problems having someone being a collaborator who's an MD. I have not necessarily, and I'm just speaking for myself, I have not necessarily felt that the foot and ankle orthopedists on this committee have been there as a collaborator. I have felt that
I would agree with
it's
you.
opposite.
I would agree with you, quite frankly, Doctor. Okay, so let's see something. Here we go. So, all right, let's see. Okay. Okay, so appointment, membership, let's see, I'm finding out right now, delegated duties. 6 members, 5 of whom shall be podiatrists, 1 of whom shall be an orthopedic surgeon specializing in the treatment of the foot. Since that is rule change, We don't have to go to the legislature for that. I'm going to research the Practice Act, but I don't see that in the Practice Act. But let me double check. Okay, so it doesn't appear that it's in the Practice Act, and a cursory review and a brief computer search for the word advisory. It doesn't appear to be in the act itself. So if that's the case, without it being in the act, it really is the opportunity for the board to receive a suggestion from you that can be done by a rule change as opposed to a statutory change. So if you want to pursue that, I'm certainly happy to do that. You know, look, I got no dog in the hunt, and I want to make sure that I adequately represent you and factually give information to both you and the board when it needs to be gotten. So if it's something you want to talk about, you know, we can, and we're willing to sit down and look at the ways to manage any change and what change we really want.
So one of the things that could be done is that it could be an MD, even if it was just a general orthopedist, or does that open up to be an MD with general surgery that would say, I don't really know anything about what you do. So, you know, I think the main thing is that in an attempt to avoid having to have conflict every time we talk about doing anything, is what we'd like to do is just have it adversarial free if possible. I'm not sure though. Well, I guess the main thing we'd be asking for is not to limit it to foot and ankle, or to just open up to general orthopedics.
If that's all you really want to do, I think that's pretty doable, quite frankly. Okay. But there would have to be an active practice. They couldn't be retired. But other than that, I think that's very doable.
Yeah. I guess the main thing is, or, you know, I'm assuming all these things are done to make sure whatever non-medical doctor committees are doing, that the medical community feels comfortable with it. I'm assuming. I don't know. Yeah. And those people then report back. So if the ortho is on our committee, they're going to report back, of course, to y'all, or they're going to report back to the Orthopedic Society and say, here's what the podiatrists are looking at doing. So, and then get the input from them. I guess I don't know how you stop it from being somebody necessarily adversarial, or that you're in competition with.
Well, I mean, if you have, let's say you have an orthopedist who's basically does knees, hips, and shoulders, okay? They're not going to be in competition for the patients, but they will have had at least a basic knowledge of what you're dealing with. You know, look, let me say this to you. The average doc has no idea how hard it is to do what you do when you start handling those wet tissue paper tendons in the foot. And I mean, I got to have the greatest respect for the people that do that work. But I mean, I think the average doc doesn't, but at least a regular orthopedist would have that knowledge and could understand the difficulties you face and that kind of thing. But to say, you know, would you want an internist? You know, we can go for anything, but I think the board will probably go with just a general orthopedist. And that way you don't have to worry about the issue of the competition, but also you'd have to worry about their affiliation with the Orthopedic Association. But ultimately, think about it this way. The board is principally composed of podiatrists. They are principally going to be able to outvote that one doctor.
Right.
And my job in bringing stuff to the board would be to bring the majority recommendation and the appropriate objection that might come from a minority group of you all. And so we can do that for you. But ultimately, the board, who none of whom we don't have a single orthopedist on the board at all.
Right.
So they're not going to be in competition with you all, and they're the actual deciders. And I think it's important to understand, we can propose a rule for this committee. We can go to the trouble of writing that rule, but as you recall, the way we did this was this last history and physical thing was we decided what we thought was best. We actually had some buy-in from the orthopedist that was on that group at the time, a little bit reluctantly, but he did ultimately understand how we were postulating it in such a way to phase it in and phase out the people who weren't qualified to do it. And the board bought into it. We changed the rules and we have what we have. And so I think that's the option we ought to consider doing here. And I mean, I don't have, like I said, I don't have a dog in the hunt. My job is to
Right.
represent you to the board and help you get this through.
I think that if we change it, I think it would just be that if you want to even have a general orthopedist on there. The reason I think back historically, I won't mention any names. It was one person that it didn't make any difference whether it was good, bad, or whatever. He wasn't going to support it. And all he did at that point in time was go back to his own group to try to defeat it. And actually he got defeated by them. So if you come in with an open mind and willing to listen and look at it in all aspects, that's fine. If you're going to come in automatically going to try to kill anything that's going to happen, well, that's, like you said, we can outvote it. It just doesn't make for a very good rapport to try to communicate with a group with one person who's going to advocate no matter what in a negative manner. So I think if we're going to ask for a change, that we just ask for it to be orthopedics and general orthopedics. Now, they may still want to put an ankle foot person, but at least it opens up if you have some general orthopedics also.
I would be for any surgeon in that regard. I mean, I think we have a lot of crossover with, I think other surgeons understand our scope and capacity. I go to all of our quarterly staff meeting and surgical meetings, and we have similar issues when it comes to the operating room with anesthesia, with, I'd be okay. I would think a general surgeon would be fine on the board, or I don't know that it has to be restricted to orthopedics, but.
Well, I think what Dr. Collada was saying, and I may be wrong, and we can discuss it, but the general surgeon may go, I got no idea how you fix a bunion or how you do an ankle implant or an ankle fusion. So I'm out of my area. I don't do those. You need to get an ortho guy. I need to discuss with ortho or somebody. Whereas even with the general orthopedics, if they rotated and did any ankle fractures or ankle fusions, or they at least have an idea, although they may not be doing them now. So I don't know. I don't know that I agree a general surgeon will feel as comfortable in making and supporting decisions as much as maybe a general orthopedist. But I'm willing to look at anything. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that? Jay, you got any ideas?
Sorry, I started talking. Thank you. I think the ortho would be appropriate. I think they have a better idea of what we do, like y'all said. They're probably more palatable to the board moving things forward. If we do, somebody who would participate on the committee would be great. We don't seem to have a lot of participation unless there's some controversy, and then we get a lot of activity. I guess one of the questions about our
I promise you that's everywhere in this area, in this building.
Okay.
I got you.
Every committee, advisory committee we deal with, trust me.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I guess it's getting everybody scheduled together for that, something else. But yeah, I think I agree. I think the ortho would be a good move and probably a palatable change, a more lateral change and not too controversial.
Yeah.
But I have to remember, Van, how do we, in terms of designating who that person is, it's someone that the board selects. Is that correct?
Yes, the board makes that appointment, okay? And we would certainly I think that's why that's the best way to do this is a rule change. And we can bring that on board. Because right now, the way the rules are written is it has to be an orthopedic surgeon specializing in treatment of the foot.
Right.
And I think if we change it to just drop in treatment of the foot and just say, we'll be an orthopedic surgeon, and all members of the advisory committee will be licensed by the board and practice and reside in the state. I think we'll probably be able to get that done without a lot of hoorah. And then we can seek people to be nominated for that. But the board makes the appointments. It doesn't go through the governor's office.
I personally think that that would be at least a good way to start, because then it doesn't restrict it to, like you said, somebody who maybe your practices down the street from you says, I don't want them doing any of this. So yes, so I would propose that if we need to, whether we have to write or whether you can do it, Van, is go and ask for a rule change to just open to be orthopedics.
All right. So let's do this. Just making myself a note so that I don't lose track of what we're talking about doing. And I will start. What I'll do now, let's do this. Do you want to make any other changes to the rules while we're doing it? Because once we open this up, if we want to tune up anything else, it might be best to do it all at once. Otherwise, coming back, starting several rule changes throughout the year, because it takes, just so you'll get an idea of what it's going to take, after January 1st, the process is going to be a little different. It's going to be shortened a little bit because the Occupational Licensing Review Committee, which we had to bring all our rules to, was requiring 2 passes initially, then have a hearing, and then come back with the results of the hearing for them to make the decision on antitrust. And we successfully got the legislature to allow us to have the AG's office to do it if people want to pay the AG to do it. And we get what's actually much better antitrust protection, because the AG's office has got antitrust experts who are going to review this and say, well, this motion is going to be problematic with antitrust. So I'd bet my last nickel that if while we're putting this 4th of January, it'll probably sail through the AG's office, and probably then all we have to do is do the normal time limits of publication, hearings. There will have to be at least one public hearing, and anybody that wants to come to a board meeting when it's discussed could comment as well. But other than that, I think this will probably sail through. It's going to be a little shorter to start this in January, but if you've got something else you want to address, let's make sure we know what that is so that we can put all those changes in one rule change, as opposed to starting a rule change here and then starting the same rule change and sequentially while there's still another one going on.
I think, unless you guys have thought of anything else that we need to look at changing at this point in time, I know of another thing I was thinking about changing in there. Am I wrong? Have y'all looked at and think there's something else that needs to be fine tuned?
I can't think of anything, Billy.
No, I think then, unless there's somebody else has something else, why don't we, this should not be a complicated, real controversial change. I don't want to add something else on that may be controversial. So, and I don't know what that is. So if need be, I'll be happy to send something to Dr. Collada Devan stating that the committee, he's already writing it down, but if he needs something official from me, I'll send it asking for a rule change to allow it to be changed to just orthopedics.
Why don't I make the minutes reflect that the motion was made by Dr. Dabdu and seconded by Ms. Dr. Denise, and it was voted on to change just this portion of the rule, and that way we get it done.
Yes, that sounds wonderful. Good. So is there any other business? Because that's all I have. Dr. Collada, do you have anything?
Not really. I'm happy to tell you that we appreciate what you do, and we try and get it done for you. Sometimes it takes longer than I'd like it to, but we have to do it the way that the state requires it happening.
I understand. Having been involved with state and national legislative stuff since the 80s, I understand. But I think, and I apologize to the committee. I had to be reminded that we needed to do a meeting, and I apologize to y'all. Right now, it looks like I'm probably going to be in practice at the most one more year. could be less. I have a 90-day out whenever I want. I think that one of y'all, I'm willing to stay on the committee, but at some point in time, I need to be replaced. If Dr. L'Oreal is going to retire, I don't know, do retirees stay on the committee or do we have to get somebody to replace Dr. L'Oreal?
Let's see. Hang on, I'll tell you in a second.
Yeah.
If she retires and gives up her license, she cannot do it. If she keeps her license, she can do it. Okay. So
So
that would be
that probably leads to another question. What else do I keep my license? Do I have to keep my license and all that stuff too?
I'm sorry, what? I did not hear you. I apologize.
If I keep my license, do I have to keep malpractice insurance too?
Not if you're not practicing.
If you're
Your
not
license
practicing,
is-
okay.
Your license is your license, and you would still pay the fees for the licensing, and you'd have to do your continuing education to keep it current. And while we're talking about continuing education, I
Oh,
just
I'm
want
glad
to
you brought
remind
that up.
everybody about that CE broker. If you haven't just signed up, you
Mhm.
need to get everybody signed up for it. But
Yeah.
again, that would really be all, and you could continue to serve.
Okay.
Billy, like I said, you also, by the same token, if you don't give up your license, even if you're not practicing,
Right.
it appears that we don't have to do that. But I'm checking again. Okay.
Well, I'm going to be actively practicing. It's just whether I stay a full year. And during the year, I mean, I don't mind staying on right now, but during the year, if it looks like things are going to wind down, then I will definitely let y'all know. And whoever wants to move up to the chairman of the advisory committee, I'll be fine with. And if somebody wants to move up now, I'll be fine with that.
We're riding this wave all the way to the end, Billy.
I never thought I'd be 70 years old still practicing, but yes.
Well, Billy, you take a look at it this way. This is retirement for me.
God bless you. That's a tough retirement.
Let me tell you, after 46 years of frontline solo OB, this is retirement.
God bless you. Yeah. And okay. So then do we need to send something out that you mentioned this about the CE broker? Does LSBME send something out, or do we need to remind our association members or anything on that?
Well, we have sent out tons of emails. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
you have.
And I can tell you that we only have about 60% of the MDs signed up, but I think that's going to change very shortly, because very shortly for the 2022 renewals, if your CEs are not in CE broker, you will not be allowed to renew. So
Okay.
if you can't renew and you wait too late, you might be practicing without a license.
Okay. So like for us, Dr. Groves and most people here, and he and I are one of the three co-chairmen of we're going to go back to a live scientific meeting in March in New Orleans, be the first one since 2 years ago. But and they're going to have more than enough hours at that meeting to get their CME done. And they can just turn it into the CE broker, turn it in if they've done it.
Right. And basically it's really all, for example, let's say the course is a 2-day course or a 1.5-day course, and everybody walks out with 10 hours, 12 hours, whatever you assign. They can then put the single certificate in for 12 hours, load it up to CE broker. And it's basically, I mean, I put in 25 hours worth about a month and a half ago, and it took me all of 7 minutes to do it. So It's not hard.
Well, I need to talk to my office manager. I know that, and Chantel and Dana may be the same way, that we have to do so many online training stuff, even with Auctioner. They require so much stuff. It's unbelievable how much junk, I shouldn't say junk, how much stuff they want you to go through on a routine basis where you can meet over 20 hours. Plus there's stuff that we do online, that through accredited, companies now to do CME. But the main thing is once you get it, you have to just program it into the CE broker. So
It's really easy, Billy. It's just to upload.
Yeah.
It's a document upload. It's not hard.
Yeah, I'm sure Donna does it because she's very astute at doing that. She's been taking care of me for years. But I'm just saying, I also want to be able to make sure our state association members know that.
Yeah.
to try to help LSBME who may be sending stuff out and remind them that if they don't do it, they're gonna have a problem renewing their license. Probably wouldn't hurt if we do that as a state association. So is there anything else, or are we coming to an end of the meeting?
Like I said, other than making sure you get that message out, we'll be sending more emails and that kind of stuff. And we'll get it done. But again, I think the important thing is get your CEs, because the board's position now is we're going to be doing our best to assure the legislature and the public that everybody gets their CEs or they will not be licensed.
Okay, I think we'll have our association president send something out on that too. Great. Well, if there's no further business, then thank you all very much for this. And I'm sorry it's such short notice. It was my fault. I'll try to stay in communication with Dr. Collada and the group and see if we need to do one every 6 months or every quarter or whatever. Then we'll all try to be more proactive. Any comments before we close off? No?
Oh, thank you, Bill.
Well, thank you all very much. And thank you, Dr. Collada. Van, take care.
Appreciate everybody's working together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Van. Thanks,
Y'all
everybody.
Be careful, stay healthy, and Merry Christmas to all of y'all.
Same to you, Van.
Merry Christmas,
Bye.
everybody. God
Merry
bless
Christmas,
you.
everybody.